Right, hi guys, and welcome back to the Cruel Corner. We're back once again in this wonderful ranty corner for all things Formula E. That's right, the Sao Paulo Grand Prix has come to a close, and what could be said about that one? Well, oh well, oh well. That was chaos, wasn't it? That was chaos. That is not what I needed. So I'm in my dressing gown, as you can see. I am ready for bed because I've got to record this episode, edit this episode, go to sleep, get up in the morning, go to work. Then I've got to come back, catch up with the Formula 1 because I finish work after the Formula 1 race is already finished. Then record that, then edit it, then get it uploaded onto YouTube, ready for Tuesday. It's a mess, guys. It is a mess. So I'm going to apologise in advance to those that are regular to the Formula E Crawl Rooms Championships. This one is going to be shorter than usual just due to the fact I've got to get it uploaded, get it edited and get it on YouTube. Otherwise it's going to just not be up. Yeah, loads of stuff going on, and the fact it was like delayed with it by an hour with the red flags and things has really not helped. So yeah, we're here once again to discuss all things Formula E, and what a crazy, chaotic race that was. It is madness, isn't it? That was a crazy race to kick off the Gen 3 Evo era. Yeah, we're going to divulge into it. We're going to go through the drivers accordingly. I scored the drivers out a maximum of 10 points based on their overall race weekend's performance, and I go all the way down to 0 if they have a particularly bad one. Take a look at bonus points if they sometimes do something extra special during a race, and on the rare occasion I do award minus points to those drivers who do something extra special, but for all the wrong reasons. We have new driver icons this season. We have a new table at the end to reveal as well, of course, that the scores will be going on to, courtesy of Joseph Willows, i.e. JW Talks Motorsport. Great friend, known him for a long time, and his YouTube channel is doing incredibly well. Really made me look stupid joining YouTube, and then was like, yeah, I've just got 3,000 subscribers overnight, no problem, a video over 100,000 views. Yeah, it's easy this, lads. So yeah, honestly, go check him out, links in the description, fantastic guy. But without further ado, we're going to kick things off with the race winner, of course, which was Mitch Evans. Well done, Mitch Evans. What a stunning drive this weekend was. Lined up at the back of the grid, last position, due to a issue with his car in qualifying, meant he couldn't set a representative lap time, and that was it, stone dead last. And he was hopeful that he was even just able to race. He was hoping that the team could get the car sorted so he could just at least be in the race, and if he could be in the race, at least pick up a few points. Here he is, taking the victory though, taking the victory from back to front. Only the second time that's ever happened in Formula E's history. It was a crazy race, but Mitch Evans did a great job. The Jaguar team really seemed to understand that, look, it's the first ever time that we're going to be using these new attack modes with the additional 350 kilowatt per hour and also four-wheel drive as well that they get enabled when they go through that attack mode, and the Jaguars really made sure that they were the first to do it, so it played advantage into their hands and they carved their way through the field. Mitch Evans drove exceptionally well this weekend, and that's why it's going to be 12 points. 12 points to Mitch Evans. What a stunning weekend. He deserves 2 bonus points to overcome that hardship in qualifying, and then to have the faith in the car despite having the technical issue in the race to just go balls out and just go for it. It really paid dividends. Some opportunities he was maybe lucky. I honestly don't know. It's crazy to work out this race, isn't it, with the drive-through penalties that happened during the race, and then of course the 2 red flags and how it all fell with the attack modes and things. But there's a lot of drivers that had a bit of luck in that race, and then some drivers that had a little bit of unluck, and then it all kind of balanced out towards the end. There's only really one driver I would say was massively unlucky, which we'll come to in a moment. But yeah, for Mitch Evans, it's 12 points to him. A stunning way to kick off his season, and drove really well, deserved that victory. In second place, we come to Antonio Felix da Costa. There he is. What a fantastic weekend he has had. Nice to see him hit the ground running with Porsche, as I mentioned in the Season 11 Constructors Predictions video just a few days ago. It was good to see. I said if he could hit the ground running, then we've got a chance with the Costa. And here he was, pretty much putting himself into the advantage position straight away. Was always running around those podiums and top 5 places, and doing a really good job in doing that. He finishes here P2. Again, maybe lucky in some circumstances, maybe unlucky in others, but overall he crossed the line in P2, and a great effort to see him achieve that. For Antonio Felix da Costa this weekend, it's going to be 9 points. 9 points on the board to him. Solid weekend overall, don't want to fault a thing. He just didn't quite have the advantage in qualifying that his teammate Vergne did. So that was the only thing to talk about, but here he is finishing P2 and was running round inside that top 5 positions where it mattered throughout most of the race and netted himself a podium. 9 to Costa. In third place we come to the rookie in Taylor Barnard. Wow, well done Taylor, well done. What a fantastic weekend he had overall. Okay, you know, he crossed the line in P3, fantastic effort, but they were really unlucky in the first phase of that race. Every single Nissan powertrain got a power overuse, and we believed initially that it was to do with the attack mode, but then latterly we found out it was to do with the energy that was used off the line. So software niggles and issues within the Nissan powertrains meant that all 4 Nissan powertrain cars, which obviously were the McLarens, and of course the 2 Nissans, all received drive-through penalties in the race. So that put them well at the back and well out of position, but then we had a red flag and then we had another red flag, and it meant that they were back involved, and they'd also not taken an attack mode. So when the final period happened and came, we got into the second red flag period, they'd worked themselves up to P3 and P4 on the grid. In the main race itself, for those last few laps, Taylor had a massive percentage power over the other cars, but because the other cars could drive flat to the finish now, and also the fact that Taylor was relatively new to the championship, was on course for a podium, he didn't want to do anything silly. Very reminiscent of what we saw from Jake Hughes a couple of seasons back at Mexico when he had the chance of a podium, and he was attacking Degrassi, and Degrassi just offered up defence, and Jake wasn't quite able to get round. Experience of the other 2 cars that were ahead of him in Mitch Evans and Costa meant that Taylor Barnard couldn't find a way through, and also he didn't really want to risk binning it, causing accidents, causing damage and losing a huge amount of points to the McLaren, all costing himself a podium. So fair play to Taylor Barnard for that. I think had it been Bird and then Barnard, Bird would have made a lunge, but as it was, Taylor Barnard P3 and was happy to be there. It's just perfect 10 to Taylor Barnard this weekend. I don't think the overall race weekend itself was great by the McLaren squad, but they did fall a little bit unlucky, as I say, with the drive-through penalties, and then the race itself came good, and he deserved it. Kept his head above water when everyone else was binning it, blowing it, and suffering from other things going on in the race. Perfect 10 to Taylor Barnard. Then we come to Sam Bird in the second of the McLarens, as already mentioned, finishing line astern with his teammate. He was told to play the rear gunner and protect Taylor while he tried to mount an attack forward. There was just one radio message from Sam, though, in those last few laps saying, look, Taylor needs to go, otherwise I'm going to get swallowed up. And that was a fair comment to make by Sam. As it was, though, the other cars behind started to sort of be energy deficient compared to the McLarens. McLarens went into a saving mode basically when they had the first drive-through penalty and they were half a lap behind. They thought, let's save the energy for if we have a safety car or a red flag. We've then got massive amount of energy compared to the others, so he was quite happy then just to stay fourth. Taylor didn't do anything stupid, Sam didn't do anything stupid, and overall overcame what was an unfortunate drive-through penalty due to no fault of the drivers. Clearly a software issue, and Sam Bird here finishing P4, which is great effort, great effort by McLaren. 9 points to Sam Bird this weekend, solid effort overall, great teamwork between the 2 of them, and great to see him here finish P3 and P4. Really good points to kick off the season. Fifth place, we come to Eduardo Mortara in the Mahindra. I'm so happy for Mahindra with this result. It's fantastic. It's sort of how they ended the season, isn't it? They ended the season quite well last year, but it was too little too late. This time around, they've kicked off the season with some solid points, not just from Mortara, but from his teammate as well, who we'll come to in a minute, and drove really well. Honestly, Mortara this weekend qualified well, drove well, did a great job, and didn't get involved in any of the other skirmishes that other cars were getting involved in, which 9 times out of 10 last year, it was always the Mahindra down an escape road. It was always a Mahindra left on its roof. It was always a Mahindra breaking down. This time around, it didn't happen. So maybe, just maybe, this is going to be Mahindra's season. And it's going to be 9 points from me. 9 points to Eduardo Mortara. Great effort once again. Drove really well, drove really smart, drove really clever, stayed out of trouble, and that's all you had to do this race to try and secure the best possible finish. But as I mentioned, he was here on merit throughout most of the race. He qualified well, raced well. It's 9 points to Mortara. well done to him. Next up in 6th place, we come to Norman Nato in the Nissan. No, Norman Nato in the Nissan. I love it. All the ends are back together once again, just like a couple of seasons ago. Here he is picking up some good points here for the Nissan squad. Admittedly, wasn't on form in comparison to his teammate. The race itself, of course, he had to do a drive-through penalty as well. As mentioned, the Nissan powertrains all suffering from power overuse and had to go through the pits once with a drive-through. And here he is securing a 6th place finish, which is respectable. But this race weekend in particular, overall from Norman, has been a little bit scruffy. I don't want to criticise him too much with that, of course. I don't want to really criticise him. It was a crazy race. It was chaotic. He had bad luck go his way as well and misfortune. But certainly looks to be struggling against the deficit with his teammate. I know at one point they were running 1-2 briefly. That was due to the attack modes now. Those are all lined up. But Norman Nato for this weekend, it's going to be a solid 7 from him. A great recovery from that drive-through penalty. Picks up some solid points with P6, but obviously look at where the other Nissan powertrain cars in the McLarens got, you know, onto the fringes of the podium places. So I have to knock it down for that, really. His teammate wasn't really a fair comparison this weekend, which is a shame to say. But then you look at it and compare to the McLarens, he just fell a little bit short of what they achieved. A solid 7 to Norman Nato. And in 7th place, we come to Nick de Vries in the 2nd Mahindra. Fantastic, fantastic stuff by Mahindra. As mentioned, a fantastic weekend for them overall, to be honest, picking up these points. De Vries struggled in qualifying, though. It must be said he was nowhere near the pace of his teammate, of course, Mortara, who got into the duels. So that was great to see. But de Vries didn't do that, didn't manage that, was quite low down the order. But as we've seen in this race, you can win from the back now, so qualifying is very much immaterial. If you've not got the pace to go for pole position, really, to pick up those 3 points that are on offer for all that, then it is kind of like, well, what do? You know, the rest of the grid doesn't really seem to matter at the moment. I'm sure once they get on top of these new regulations and work out how to use the attack modes more efficiently, then it'll kind of quieten down a little bit. But for now, Nick de Vries had a fantastic race overall. It's a solid 8 from him. Good effort. 8 points to him. I think he's done a good job there. Certainly picked up a good few points. Can't really see him expected to finish any higher than what he did. His teammate was 5th. He was 7th. Maybe ahead of Norman Nato, perhaps. As mentioned, qualifying wasn't great, but it didn't really matter in the end, and he recovered well. 8 to Nick de Vries. Next up, we come to Sebastian Buemi in the first of the Envision cars. Qualified himself just on the fringes of the top 10 with about 12th or 13th, something like that anyway. And in the race itself, looked to be staying in and around the top 5, potentially 5th, 6th, that sort of area. Got wing damage that they were able to replace during the first red flag period, but that sent him to the back of the pack, and then climbed his way up through the field once again to finish here and pick up a few points, a handful of points, which is better than what Envision had done previously in that midpoint of the season last season. But again, I think Buemi would have been hopeful for more this time around, and it just didn't quite happen, did it? There were some points briefly where he was looking like he was on for a podium, and then it just tailed away again. Anyone could have won this race, though, to be honest. Let's be honest, any driver could have won, provided how crazy this race got. For Sebastian Buemi, it's going to be a solid 6 from me. Solid 6. I think it's a good effort. He picked up a few points, but drivers ahead of him and further down the field as well that got more unlucky. Yeah, sort of did a better job overall. I'm not going to criticise Buemi by any stretch of the imagination, but yeah, 6 to Buemi. I think it's a fair score for what was a solid weekend, but nothing overly special or spectacular again from the Envision squad. Finishing in 9th place and picking up a couple of points already in race number 1 for the newly branded Kiro Race Co. It is, of course, Dan Ticktum. Well done, Dan. A couple of points for him. Didn't see anything of him in that race, and that's a good thing, because normally Dan Ticktum's the one involved in the drama, the one normally shouting and swearing over the radio and crying and kicking off, and he didn't. He just had a solid race weekend this weekend. Qualified himself P11, just missed out on the duels, which was a shame. But he said, you know, I think there was a couple more tenths in it from my side. I didn't quite get it right. But I'm confident that we're able to going to put up a good fight in the race. And put up a good fight. He did a respectable race, picking up a couple of points for a team that really struggled to score points towards the end of the last season. And yeah, Porsche powertrain in the back of that, clearly working well. it's a solid 8 from Dan Ticktum from me. I think P11 on the grid and a points finish is mainly the best he could have got out of that. I really do. So we'll see how it goes. Obviously, next month's race. It's difficult to judge the pace of the cars and the overall pack, of course, because we had mechanical issues in qualifying. We had, of course, the mechanical issues in the main race. We had the penalties in the race. So it was very topsy-turvy. But for now, I think 8's fair for Dan Ticktum. A solid race overall. And picking up the final points paying position, we come to Jean-Eric Vergne in the first of the DS Penske's. What a shame to see Jean-Eric Vergne down here just picking up one solitary point after such a great effort in the qualifying rounds. Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it? It's a shame to see him down here and just not really having the overall pace. I wouldn't say he got unlucky at any stage of the race, and I also wouldn't say that he looked into anything this race. I just think that's where it was in the end, which is a great shame. Worked the way up to the front briefly, but again, what car didn't, what team didn't at some point. But yeah, finishing here in P10 is a bit of a shame, isn't it? For Jean-Eric Vergne, I've gone for a solid 6 again. It's difficult to rate him, really, without sitting and just watching his onboard every single lap like I would have to for most of the drivers to really understand what happened. P10 here just seems a little bit short. I think he could have been on for a lot more than that. Finishing behind a Kiro, finishing behind a couple of cars that had drive-thrus. I know they kind of mitigated themselves, but it just didn't seem to go well for Jean-Eric Vergne this weekend overall. And yeah, picks up a point. It's some consolation, but I think it could have been a few more. 6-2. Jean-Eric Vergne. Just outside the points and finishing unlucky for some P11, we come to Stoffel Vandoorne in his newly appointed team in the Maserati, of course. And this just seems very typical Vandoorne, this. Finishing P11 when points were possible. It just seems to be following the same trend as what we saw from him last year, of course. Again, it was a bit like Jean-Eric Vergne. I don't really see any stage in that race where he was massively unlucky. And I also don't see any stage in that race where I thought he got a massive amount of luck. I just think he had the race that was a normal race. And here he is finishing in P11. Very disappointing to say that. Maserati on course, of course, hoping for points. And at some stages of the race, it did look like they were going to be on for a good handful of them. But as it was, none picked up. Vandoorne's here in P11, which is a great shame. It's 4 points to Vandoorne. Big disappointment. Like I say, without going through every single lap that every single driver did and how it all worked out, it's going to be impossible to see what actually happened. But yeah, for Vandoorne, 4 to him. Missing out on a points finish in a car that should do it. And yeah, that's that. P12, we come to the second DS Penske with Maxi Gunther. Yeah, he wasn't. Jake Dennis wasn't too happy with him at the start, was he, for making a lunge up his inside and said, "Oh, typical. That's nice of Max." But apart from that, we didn't really hear or see much of him since. Finishing down here in P12 again. Don't really know what happened. Don't know how they ended up down here or why. But really struggled. Maybe they had to change a front wing in the red flag period. Actually, is just coming to me. I'm sure someone had to do that in that second red flag, and that's what sent them right to the back of the pack again, because you're not allowed to get a free wing change like you can in Formula 1. That might have been Gunther, actually, potentially. So maybe I've been harsh with this score, but it's 4 points to him as well. Like I say, though, it's so difficult. I've not got the time, unfortunately, to sit down and really assess everything and take everything into great detail. I've just got to record this, get it edited, get it uploaded as quickly as possible, and that's that. So yeah, 4 Maxi Gunther, 4 points to him. Great shame this weekend not to see DS Penske pick up a lot more points than they deserved. 1 on the board. They'll be wanting to go into the next round and picking up a hell of a lot more. 4 to Gunther. Finishing unlucky for some P13, we come to Zane Maloney in the first of the Lola Apt Yamaha. Is that the way around it goes? I'm not too sure. But yeah, Zane Maloney this weekend, encouraging to start with, to be honest. I think he did a good job in the early phases before the first red flag intervention. Got himself up into P5 briefly, and everyone was shocked at that, but he was just one of the first cars to take the attack modes that was ever so powerful. And then just ebbed and fell away, really, and we didn't see much of him. Again, I think he might have been a car that had to have a nose change under a red flag and sent him to the back of the pack again, to be honest. I think that might have happened to him as well, and he fell victim of that. But again, you make your own luck in the sport, and Zane Maloney, it was an encouraging race. I mean, at least he made the flag. There were so many cars that didn't, and that has to be commended. But for Zane Maloney, it's a solid 4 to him as well. A solid 4 points to Zane Maloney on his debut in Formula E. Don't think he did anything drastically wrong this weekend. And he didn't get really lucky, but again, don't think he fell overly unlucky as well. So yeah, Zane Maloney, an encouraging first race. Build on that next month, and hopefully he can go again and go strongly. 4 to Zane Maloney. Then we come to the last of the finishers in this race. Can you believe it? We're only here in P15 and we're down to the last finisher. It is Ollie Rowland. What a shame. Ollie Rowland. He got the power overuse, but he got it on the second restart. So that was that game over and done with, I'm afraid. Game, set, max. Once he had the second restart and had to do the drive-through, that was it. Damage limitation. That game over. Game over. He had to do a drive-through and then was at the back of the pack and had no time to recover that moment. So, yeah, big shame for Ollie Rowland. There was a win there. There was a win there easily for him. Instead, it ended up falling short. And he's down here in P15 with absolutely no chance at all to even pick up points. That was really unlucky, wasn't it? If it had been like the other Nissans that picked you up at the first part of the race, you'd be like, oh, God's sake. But then all of a sudden you go up there and finish on the podium. Ollie Rowland got a bad run of luck there. That was massively unlucky. That was a win that slipped by him. A P2 was absolute minimum, I would say. It's a solid 7 from Rowland this weekend from me. Really harsh, I know, because it should be a perfect 10. He didn't do anything too wrong, but it's just the way things are at the moment. It's difficult for me to judge absolutely every single person correctly and accurately. Ollie Rowland, though, great qualifying effort, great race, great job with the attack modes and things. Just the power overuse absolutely screwed him. The score kind of reflects that, which is harsh on Rowland, and I know it is, but I know he'll come good in the future races. And with the Cruel Corner series, it's same to the Cruel Room. Some drivers I'll score a little bit low, and then next race I'll score him a little bit high, and it all balances out over the season. But for now, Ollie Rowland, a solid 7 to him. Great job. Just very gutted for him that he wasn't higher up where he deserved to be. Then we come to the list of retirements. The first on this list, so the last to retire in the race, of course, was Nick Cassidy. Had the late incident with Pascal Vergne, unfortunately, and also had the incident with Maxi Gunther when he got fed off into the wall, and it all got a little bit messy and screwy, didn't it? It was a big shame to say and see. But yeah, unfortunately, he broke his suspension with those 3 wide moments. The steering arm was broken, and then he had no choice. Vergne was going around his outside. Cassidy couldn't steer. He got collected, I should say, Vergne, which tipped Vergne on his roof, and it was a big accident. Good to see everyone get out okay, and this is Nick Cassidy's luck, I'm afraid. He really struggled with that, and that's no fault of his own. It was just a racing incident that broke his steering, and then, of course, it sent Pascal Vergne to end up on his roof. So maximum for the retirements I score is 5, and that's exactly what Nick Cassidy's getting. 5 points to Nick Cassidy for a strong weekend overall. A podium there was on the cards, a potential victory as well, but it fell short sadly due to no fault of his own as such. Just a racing incident, broke his steering arm, and then he took out Vergne, which wasn't his fault. Great shame though, great shame indeed. 5 to Cassidy. Of course, just behind Nick Cassidy, we come to Pascal Vergne. As mentioned, he ended up on his roof due to no fault of his own either. If Nick Cassidy is an innocent victim, then my God, Pascal Vergne certainly was as well. We've already explained the incident. He tried to swoop round the outside of Nick Cassidy, who had broken suspension or steering arm or something along those lines. He couldn't turn right for the fast right-hander and just clipped the back end of Pascal Vergne. Tyre-to-tyre contact, flipped him up over onto his roof. Thankfully, Pascal Vergne is okay. A potential win once again went missing there. A double podium for Porsche would have certainly been possible, I feel. And big shame, big shame, because Vergne was driving well, got pole position, of course, so still picks up 3 points in the standings. And for Pascal Vergne, it's middle of 5 to him, but which is the maximum retirement can score once again. Not criticise him at all for this weekend. That was just an unfortunate incident. Wrong place, wrong time. Next up, we come to David Beckman in the second of the Kiro Race Co cars. Big shame for him. I didn't really see much of him in the race, unfortunately. Retired due to mechanical issues, I feel, as opposed to any contact anyway, at least from what I saw in the race. Yeah, overall, just a shame though, isn't it? Didn't look to have the pace of his teammate, which is fine. He's a relative rookie in the sport. He's a bit like Taylor Barnard, only done a couple of races prior. But yeah, David Beckham this time around, it's going to be 2 points to him. Maybe a little bit harsh there, but in comparison to what other drivers did this race, David Beckman seemed to struggle, didn't really try to get himself in the mix of points at all, to be honest with you. Rarely saw him inside that top 10, if at all. And yeah, look, just to try and have a quiet race, and obviously that quiet race didn't quite happen. He's here in the pits and retired. But yeah, unfortunate for him, but at least he got some mileage under his belt, and he can go again next month. 2 to Beckman. Next up we come to Jake Dennis in the first of the Andrettis. My oh my, that seems crazy to say, doesn't it? A double retirement for the Andretti squad, and here's the first one on this list, the last to retire in the race. He was the cause of the first red flag due to no fault of his own. The car totally shut down and he had no brakes, and then when the emergency hydraulic brake kicked in, he came to a stop at turn 1, and the car wasn't safe. It was red, which meant it was potentially live. There was something wrong with it. It wouldn't shut down properly, so they had to have a red flag for that, because obviously you don't want marshals touching it and getting electrocuted. So they had to send a team out there to make sure the car was safe to touch and shut the car down properly via a computer, which took a little bit of time but got that done. Unfortunately for Jake Dennis, potential top 5 was on the cards there. Maybe could have scraped a podium. The pace was looking good. He was looking good as well, to be honest. He was really fiery but driving fairly. And again, out of the maximum of a retirement can score a 5. Jake Dennis is getting just that. 5 to Jake Dennis. Really did deserve that result, and it's a shame to see him at the side due to no fault of his own. Teething troubles with the new Evo car, era of car. It's bound to happen. It's a shame it happened to Jake Dennis. 5 to him, though, which is the maximum I can give a retirement. Then we come to Lucas Di Grassi in the second of the Yamaha Apt Lolas, or Lola Yamaha Apt. I'm not too sure. I will work it out by the end of the season, I'm sure. But yeah, Lucas Di Grassi, I don't even know why he retired, to be honest. I just know he's down here and out. He had an off, didn't he? He had front wing damage and went down an escape road, but it didn't look like it was a race-ending amount of damage, but obviously it was, and we're not sure how that unfolded, is what I should say. I saw him down the escape road, I just don't know how it unfolded, but front wing damage normally means you've hit the back of someone. But that was unfortunate either way. Maybe got fed into the wall and broke the suspension, I'm not too sure. But he limped it back to the pits nonetheless and retired the car there. So it's 3 points to Lucas Di Grassi this weekend. 3 to him. Didn't really see what went wrong. The race pace itself was okay. I think he qualified himself about 14th, 15th, which was okay, I guess, for this new squad, just learning the ropes. Shame not to see him get some more mileage under the belt. Was looking like he was on the fringes of the points in the early phases of that race anyway, until it all went wrong. So maybe they could have scraped a point had luck gone his way, but it didn't. So yeah, 3 to Di Grassi. Then we come to Jake Hughes in the Maserati. What a shame for Jake Hughes. A really unusual incident. So Buemi got caught up on the back of someone else ahead of him at the fast right-hander, where the same accident happened for Nick Cassidy and Pascal Wehrlein. So Buemi had hit the car ahead that had tried to overtake a car ahead that had failed and had to back out of it. Caused a little bit of a bunching effect. Jake Hughes snapped his wheel to the right, to the left, sorry, to try and avoid Buemi. Clipped the back of Buemi's tyre and spat him off into the wall, and then universally he was already out at that point anyway, suspension was broken. But then at the same point, one of the Kiro cars hit the back of Nico Muller through the same corner, and just to add insult to injury, Nico Muller arrived inside Jake Hughes, which is probably the first time that's ever been said. Hopefully the last. But yeah, it was a big shame. It was just a double whammy, you know. It was bad enough that Jake Hughes had crashed into the wall and was out of the race, but then to have rear end damage to the car as well, due to no fault of your own in that situation, and for Nico Muller to come across a car that was arrived at the same point that he was having an accident because he'd just been tapped into a spin. Yeah, massively unfortunate timing for those guys. But Jake Hughes we're talking about at the moment, 3 points out of the maximum of 5. Qualifying wasn't as great. It was okay though. Looking like he could have scored a couple of points. Looked like to be on the fringe of the top 10. And then just went wrong. And it wasn't really his fault. It was just racing circumstances, racing incident. And that was that. 3 to Jake Hughes. Then as mentioned, of course, the car arriving on scene into the side and into the back of Jake Hughes was indeed Nico Muller in the second of the Andrettis on this list, so the first to retire in the race, of course. Big shame, really, but Nico Muller has had a scruffy weekend this weekend. I would say he's probably the driver that's disappointed him the most, I would say. Qualifying was very disappointing, well down the order where he should have been a lot higher up. He was the only car to have an incident in practice and busted a tyre, so he managed to take his only joker tyre of the season in round 1 because they're allowed 1 additional tyre throughout any of the races just for 1 weekend. For 1 weekend, they can ask for 1 extra allocation of tyre to cover for punctures and things, because they're only restricted to 6 tyres over the course of the weekend, aren't they? So they have 1 full set and then a front and rear spare, basically, is what they get. So, yeah, they asked for their Joker tyre because Nico Muller tagged the wall and broke his rim, which damaged the tyre. And that was that. So, yeah, Nico Muller, it's going to be a solitary 1 from me this weekend. Broke his wheel in practice and damaged his tyre. Using his Joker already in the first race is not ideal. And then, of course, qualifying was a lot lower down than I expected him to be. And then the race itself, he was lower down the order than I would have liked him. Especially considering where JQ's was at that point, but it wasn't his fault. He got tapped into a spin and spat into the side of JQ's. Had JQ's car not been there, I still feel that Muller would have tagged the wall and probably sustained enough damage to retire anyway, but I just think it adds insult to injury that JQ's was there just to make the car a bit more of a smellier mess than the team really wanted it to be. So yeah, Nico Muller, 1 point to him. And unfortunately, that's that. But yeah, disappointing weekend. He was the only driver that really stood out as having a tough weekend overall. Last but by no means least, we come to Robin Frijns in the second of the Envisions, and this driver didn't even start the race. Sadly, broke down on the grid and did a great job to tell the marshals that I've got an issue, waving his hands. There were 3 red lights ready to go out, but the marshals spotted him waving his hands. The car just had a complete power failure, shut down. They believe it was an inverter failure, which could be costly. Could be costly to the to those guys, because I think they're only allowed 2 or 3 inverters throughout the entirety of the season, and if that's gone already in race 1 and ruined your race before it even began, then yeah, that's a big issue, isn't it? Qualified alongside his teammate in respects to qualifying. It was very close, and yeah, maybe it could have been where his teammate was, maybe a little bit higher had the race unfolded differently, but he didn't even make the start, which was a great shame. So a maximum of 5 that he can score, it's 4 to Robin Frijns. I think is fair, and yeah, that's that really. We'll just move on from that, and as will Robin Frijns after a tough weekend. So everything, guys, those were the runners and riders of the Sao Paulo E-Prix. Let me know down in the comment section, did I score any drivers too high, any too low? The updated standings with the scores I have just awarded are on the screen now for you to take a look. And of course, as this is only round 1, it is very much of a muchness. Don't worry, Lotterer of the Week is still here. I have just decided not to award any this time around because of how crazy the race actually was, how unlucky certain drivers were, and how lucky other drivers were as well. I'd like to say I just kind of knew that Muller was the one that had the toughest weekend, but still didn't think it was fair to award a Lotterer due to the fact that the race itself had so much left to give when he was cruelly taken out of the race due to no fault of his own, despite everything else being difficult leading up to that point. But don't worry, Andre Lotterer shall return to award a Lotterers of the Weeks next round, hopefully, when it's not as crazy. As already mentioned at the start of the video, a massive thank you to Joseph Willows, JW, Talks Motorsport, of course. I'll leave his channel in the description below for you to check out. Make sure you subscribe to him, watch his videos. He's a great guy. Thank you so much to him for doing the driver icons in the corner of your screen and for the scoreboard that you saw on your screen as well. He's put a lot of time and effort into that, I know he has, and he's really appreciated, buddy. Thank you so much. So I'll see you all in a month's time for the Cruel Corner series anyway. The next one is at... I can't remember because it's not Saudi, is it? Saudi's the one after. I can't remember, but I'll probably remember the second I stop recording and I'll be really annoyed with myself. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, guys. And as always, much love.